Thank you. First of all, it's nice to see so many of you here. And actually, I would like to each of you to introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Courtney Hempel. I'm from San Francisco. I work at a company called Carbon 5. We do custom software for devices of all sorts. So we do design and development. And I was a developer for 8 years. I still am a developer, I shouldn't say was, but my role now as partner is getting to do a lot less coding and a lot more sort of talking to folks. But this is something that obviously I'm quite interested in. So yeah, that's me.
Hi, my name is Małgorzata Plichta. I am a Giggers Carrots representative. I organize Giggers Carrots events in Kielce. We also do coding workshops there. And yeah, I am a part of this great community which is growing right now. I hope that there will be an opportunity to say a bit more about it, about the initiative, Giggers Carrots initiative later. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cassie Shum. I'm from New York. I work for a company called ThoughtWorks. We too do custom software for different clients around the world. Been a mobile developer, developer for the last 5 years. So been at many different clients dealing with many different mobile issues. So yep, that's my bit.
Okay, so let's start. All three of you have been active on a tech scene for a couple of years now, and you had your ups and downs. And was there in any way were there in any way difficulties for you?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about my experience. I think it's always actually helpful for me to hear sort of how other really diverse makeups find their way into tech. For me, it was sort of a circuitous path. I came in from biology, and after I graduated, sort of fell into the first sort of tech boom in San Francisco through a friend of mine who had a startup. His startup ended up going great. I learned to code kind of on the job, and frankly, it was just a very supportive community of guys. But they were very, well, they were sort of aligned to want to get me to code because obviously it helped them grow their company, but they were very keyed into seeing me succeed as a developer. And I was fortunate enough to fall into Carbon 5 after that and was with another group of folks that were very interested in sort of pair programming, which I sort of attribute as being the thing that leveled me up the fastest. I think that what I see happening today in technology is that if you can provide an environment that is inviting, if you can provide a tool set of mentorship, and ideally a very close mentorship, which is, I'm kind of going to continue to refer back to pair programming. This is sort of the thing that allows people to communicate a lot more directly with one another, really learn in a fashion that is hands-on, day-to-day, pretty continuous. So those are the things that sort of led me to really, both enjoy programming. It's like, going into work every morning, grabbing a cup of coffee and effectively solving problems was really fun for me, and it was presented as such to me. So sort of low barrier of entry wasn't sort of seen to me as being a constrained environment. It was very open to me learning. And learning for most of us, I think, as human beings was fun. So that's kind of how I got into development.
Okay. Okay, as it comes to me, I think because you're asking mostly about, well, the downs, not the ups, right? The downs, as it comes to well, for me, the biggest failure I had was trying to, well, I started a startup, let's say. This is like very nice to say nowadays, but the thing that was the biggest problem for me was that the guys that I turned myself, the guys that I asked for help in any way, they were not treating me well with not seriously enough, and also. It is also very difficult to separate some kind of gender expectations from your co-founders, from other co-founders, if they are male. I mean, it's difficult to explain that, but in general, I had to get rid of one of my programmers because it was really difficult to work with him, because he was expecting to, I don't know, date me, and I wasn't interested in that, and he couldn't separate one thing from another. So I think that it is much easier for guys to be founders because they are in the group of people in the society which is not, well, it is natural for them, and for us we are expected to be I don't know, we are playing many roles instead of being just founders. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, so see, experiences. One of the most interesting experiences actually happened about 6 months ago when I went on my last client site. So a lot of my issues with women in IT and actually dealing in this type of environment is actually more on the client site. So when I went in there, it was like the first day, and I came in as one of the tech leads for the Android and iOS apps that they were building. And it's behavioral, it's cultural. This culture was very male dominated, and there are assumptions when you make when you're in that type of environment. So when I walked in, I think a few people asked me right off the bat, "Oh, you're one of the new little QAs that started with us," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm going to be one of your tech leads. So have fun with that, you know." And so, and that I don't necessarily say that's like the worst thing. It is a very cultural, behavioral situation. If you're around men all day long, you're gonna feed off of that, right? So how do we change something like that? I think it's something where the company that I'm at, ThoughtWorks, has been very, very supportive. I've gotten so many role models out of ThoughtWorks, and so it's those people who support you. So similar to what Caroline was saying, is that support and those people that you can look up to and actually go into a client like that saying, no, that's what I'm doing, and actually having that team with you. So we have a ThoughtWorks team on this client site, and once you behave in a certain way, and once you say, oh, this is a girl who actually knows a lot about, you know, the iOS and Android apps, then people start feeding off of that a bit. And so this is something that I've sort of learned over the last few years of being in this industry is you sort of make it what you want it to be, and involving all the people around you, involving your support system, involving, you know, my company is super awesome because I have people like even Martin Fowler, like, is a big proponent of women speaking and actually getting in front of people and saying, this is, you know, these people know things, so let's hear from them. And so I've been very lucky to be part of ThoughtWorks just because I've gotten that support. You know, most of my hard times is when I first enter into a client site. So, yeah.
Okay, but I guess we can all agree that there are not many women in tech. So what are the reasons for that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that there's a couple of reasons. One I would say is that the thing that both of you have alluded to, which is effectively cultural bias. I think that even as women, we sort of have this expectation that the way in which we see the world, there are less women in the room when we're talking, and we sort of respond in a very non-rational, but just sort of like intuitive sense to that. I think that's one of it. I think that, you know, we're focusing a lot on sort of the input of getting more women into technology, which I think is hugely important. I think on the other side of the spectrum, you know, you can see that there's sort of a positive feedback loop if you can get more women in leadership roles, and they're just absent from the stage right now. So I think that, you know, getting more women speaking, getting more women in the public sector, getting more women ideally in leadership roles is a huge way in which we could potentially bring more women. You know, right now, the way that it exists, I think, frankly, like, changing behaviors and changing people's sort of inherent biases is a very hard thing to do. And I think that, you know, a lot of companies are doing all sorts of, you know, diversity training and whatnot, but the reality is it's going to be a slow needle to move, and I think that we have to continually be bringing it to the forefront of the discussion. So I think, you know, kudos to the conference for sort of having this, because it's something that we do need to continually be thinking about and discussing.
I will answer with a story. I've read an article about a guy who is, I think, he was Asian for sure. Maybe he was Chinese, and he wrote about how when he got into college, and he studied engineering or something like that. But when he started, he didn't really have much experience. But because he was Asian, all the people when they were supposed to work in small groups on some projects, all the people were expecting him to take over, to be the leader, to do all the programming, and only because he looked like a person that we naturally associate with some more advanced, let's say, skills as it comes to, for example, programming or maths or anything. And it was his own, it was an article that he wrote, so a blog post. And he managed to learn quickly only because he was exposed more often to situations in which he was supposed to confront with programming, with stuff like that. And I think that partially the problem is that women are not encouraged, and men are naturally expected to do certain things. And I think it is all, it happens in all aspects of our lives, not only in programming, but also as it comes to, I don't know, bringing up children, the other side, right? I'm not saying that this is a wrong or right thing, but for sure, we are limited. All of us are limited because of the cultural or societal expectations.
And that being said, actually, I think it is our responsibility, both men and women of this generation, to bring up and make sure that cultural bias is we need to even the playing field down below. When I say down below, I mean like going down to the younger generations, going to the high schools, going to the grade schools, and actually saying, hey, like let's encourage everybody, but including women, in being excited about technology. One of the main things that we've done, especially in New York right now, is a program called Technovasion. And this is where we go and target different high schools around New York. And it's an international program, so in every type of city. And we pick groups of young females in high school to work on a software project and to enter that into competition. And seeing these girls get really, really excited about it, that's something that I didn't have when I was in high school. This was something that, I didn't even know that I could be excited about technology. It's just educating women at a very young age, saying, are you actually interested in this? Like giving them that opportunity to see it and to see if they enjoy it. And if they do, that can actually make it go along and increase that diversity going forward. So we're at this front right now where, yes, the percentage is quite low, but it's our responsibility as all of us to get involved in these types of programs. Look at these girls in grade school and say, do you actually like to do math? Like, let's give you that opportunity. Let's embrace that, right?
May I add something? Because commenting on what you said, there is no evidence, let's say, that girls are bad at all those kinds of related to science topics. Actually, as it comes to lower education, very many women are really good at maths, and they sometimes even there is even a bigger amount of them in I don't know, lower primary schools or secondary schools that are really good at it.
Okay, but there's the cultural bias on the one hand, and on the other there are evolutionary biologists who say that men and women are different, and we have different brains and we perceive the world in a different manner. So why do we actually need women in tech?
Yeah, that was the zinger, huh? Yeah, I think, as you were mentioning, there are definitely studies that have been done that show that women are just as capable of logical thinking. And there's absolutely been comments that have been thrown out that are ridiculous, like, women don't think linearly. And sort of, it's proven. There have been tests that have been shown, particularly at a younger age. And I would argue that towards as women sort of progress through society, obviously that's when you start to form your cognitive biases. There is a tipping point where they start to see that women, as they progress into more sort of a societal framework within schooling, they do kind of start to drop off in both their interest and in their capacity to do higher level learning and math competencies. So I think that the numbers show that the underlying competency is there from sort of their cognition levels. As we sort of start to form, our concepts of sort of worldviews and our cognitive biases, that's when we start to see that women in both their interest level, because they're perceiving and they're looking at the world around them, they're dropping off. They don't necessarily see a lot of leaders in technology and biology and these other, STEM fields. They're not looking around and being like, oh, the people that I want to identify with, the people that I'm looking to be in the future are, scientists, they're computer whizzes, they're, the head of Google or along those lines. That's happening more, and I would love to see it happen even more. But I think that, to your point, if we can even allow, and I wouldn't just say women, diversity across the board, people to understand sort of, there's a lot of places within technology that you can play, and in the STEM fields in general. And there's many avenues, there's many different cool opportunities, and being able to sort of showcase that. I think women getting on stage and talking about their experience and what they're doing and all the cool things that are happening is one opportunity for, every generation and every age group to really be like, I can go there, or there, or there, or there. It's, I see that as sort of something that can sort of pull up a lot more people.
But and I completely agree with that. And the other point I want to make around this is, historically speaking, people who are in computer science fields and STEM fields, 10 years ago, I mean, that cultural mindset of that is like that programmer is going to be in the corner somewhere, like dressed up and they don't talk to anybody and that type of thing. And we need to get away from that as well, because when we talk about women actually, being able to look at all different perspectives, that's really successful in these types of businesses right now. I mean, we talk about this conference right now and it's mobile with a human touch. Like, we need to talk about the customers that we're trying to reach out. The software we're developing is for everybody, right? And so these types of qualities of being able to, lead a project, a very technical project, and being able to, communicate with all these different types of people, that's very important as well. And I think not just women, but we need to embrace everybody, all technologists, even the really nerdy ones who doesn't want to talk to anybody. I mean, this is, in the end, we want to be successful in what we do, right? So,
All I want to add is that correlation between, well, I mean, of course, men and women brains are different, and all I want to say is that this fact doesn't necessarily mean that we are not capable of the change of being someone playing an important role in this industry, but I think that partially, what is important is that men are more, let's say, they are more.
Sharing?
Yes, well, they are more created, let's say, for competence. They are better. They work better in an environment that is competitive, and I think that women are not. If they want to be visible in tech, they need to start playing. I mean, this is expected from them, that they will start playing the way that men do. They don't have the space to create their own. The space, the ability, the chance to create their own way of doing it. As I've told you before the panel, I said that I'm really happy that we have a panel. This is a discussion. It's not. I'm not standing here in front of you, and I'm not trying to. I don't know. To tell you why I'm right, because in this kind of situation, there is a space for everybody, and when there is a person standing here talking to you, it somehow it is a situation in which the listener, the audience, feels like, well, there is a conflict, let's say, yeah. And one more thing, the last thing, I remember I read a blog post also about a conference that was in Warsaw a couple of months ago, and it was also a conference about IT. And there was supposed to be a women's tech panel about a panel about women in tech, and the women weren't even allowed on the stage because the guys that were sitting there and that were talking about something got so deep into the conversation that they didn't let them on the stage. They took all their time, and nobody, like, can you imagine something like that? This is, I mean, this is a terrible example.
Can I add one
Yeah,
quick thing?
sure.
So I'll make it quick. Two things, and they'll be quick. First is women-led companies, they are, actually data shows, as successful, if not more successful. Diverse minds in a room, huge bonuses there. I mean, this is sort of across the board, everyone understands this to be something that actually is a monetary value. So differences between men and women, Mars, Venus, that's a good thing. Second thing I would say is that, to your point, there was a conference that was happening where Bill Gates was giving a keynote, and one of the questions lobbed at him was, what can we do? This was in India. What can we do as a society in India to make ourselves at the forefront of technology in the future? And he was literally looking at an audience where there was a screen between the men that were taking up about 80% of the room and the women that were screened off from the rest of the group. Thank you. Thank you very much. So he's basically saying you've ostracized half of your population. Like, how are you going to provide value if you are not including half of your population? So I think that that's sort of something, to recognize. If we don't include everyone, women, men, diverse, whatever, we are not adding value to the world.
Okay, so I want to just ask about what you said. Do you think that when a girl enters the tech community, does she have to be like more manly? Does she have to act like guys
I
do?
think it depends on the guys around. I mean, because as you have said also, your communities have been pretty supportive, and well, it just depends on the maturity. Let's say the people here who came for this panel. I guess that it is much easier to talk to them about this kind of stuff, right? I think that there are probably almost no guys here, or maybe, but I think that it might be also we could also, sorry. I mean, I didn't finish my sentence. I meant that there are no guys who think that there is no space for women in tech. This is what I meant. But I think that there are also women who could be somehow accused of this kind of thinking, right? But anyway, well, straight to the point. I think that it all depends on the group. And yes, in some situations, women may have to play the game in a way that guys do, but at some point they will reach the ceiling, and this is the difficult part, because even, let's say, okay, the venture capitals that have been, well, the whole sorry. The fact that the venture capitals exist, and angel funds exist, is mostly due to what guys have done, right? So we cannot say that, well, we don't owe men anything, because we owe them really like almost everything that we have now, right? So we have to like pay back we have to appreciate that, but at the same time, right now, when women are creating interesting products and they would need some kind of funding, the level at which they are funded is very, very, very low. That it's like 3% of all the companies that were funded in Silicon Valley. There was less than 3% that were created by women or led by women. So
they also get smaller rounds.
Yes, they got smaller rounds as well.
Yeah, well, okay. So but going back to the question around do we have to act a certain way when we enter a room full of men or full of those types of things? I would go with the answer of no. We should try not to. We should be ourselves. I know it's difficult, but it's not just women. It's like someone who is actually different from a crowd that you're different from, right? And in this instance, it's maybe more men, and that you're the woman going in there. But I think. And agreed. I've actually had a very supportive community, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I do feel that it is still, going back to my point earlier, it's behavioral, it's cultural, and I'm not sure if I really want to go into a group of men where I have to feel like I act like them in order to fit in, because A, I'm not being myself, and B, I'm not going to be able to change that behavior eventually, right? And it's difficult, very difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's the hard path that we have to go through right now in order to change for future generations going forward, to change that behavior. And I've been in those rooms. I've been in those teams where I'm like, wow, oh my gosh, I'm the only girl here. But at the same time, it's about quality and merit as well. Like, we have to think about, we know how to code, we know how to be programmers, we have facts, we know what to do, and maybe it's a little bit slower in the beginning, just trying to prove that bit of it. But I prefer to actually prove that bit as opposed to trying to act that part. So that's where I want to go with that.
I guess the only thing I would say is that I think it's a strategic play, like anything in life. I think you have to understand, what is the playing field that you've been given, and then understand sort of what are the levers that you have to manipulate. That isn't to say that you need to dramatically change who you are in order to play, because otherwise you're probably playing the wrong game. But I think that it's important for us to recognize across the board sort of who it is that we're talking to, the environment in which we are, and to figure out how we can sort of move things in a direction that's going to align more to our values, but to recognize sort of where we are. So I think, for an example, in venture capitalist, I think a lot of the time what I've heard from, this was actually something that I overheard from a panel that was given by venture capitalists, by women that were in venture capitalism. The data that comes back is that women generally lead first with sort of numbers and sort of making a case, whereas men really lead with kind of like, I'm going to knock this thing out of the park no matter what. You're investing in me, it's going to be killer. They actually, for venture capitalists, they're like, I want the dude that's never going to sleep, or I want the person, I should say, that's not going to sleep and who's working for this company. And so they oftentimes would align more towards that. And I think that that's not to say that women need to not present themselves, but to be very confident in a room, to be very much who they are and to own it, and then use that ownership of a situation to really present themselves as just as capable as anybody else.
Okay, so from the practical point of view, what can we do to empower the women, to show the ones interested in coding, in startups, in technology? What can they do out there?
Going back to my earlier point, role models, right? So the more we do things like this, the more that we have women speakers, the more that we have women leading the different teams. I mean, that's going to help this entire situation. So when a young female developer walks into a team and they see a female leader, I mean, that itself will give them courage in order to take that data, take what they know, and actually move forward with that. I think what we're doing right now is actually definitely helping those types of things, but not just the women leaders, but the men as well, the men on the teams, and giving them, knowledge, actually. So a lot of the times, because what I say is behavioral, is like, you kind of just do your thing sometimes, right? And I think it's our responsibility to educate, the men on our teams as well. Is like, oh, maybe what you did just now, or that phrase you just said, is actually kind of offensive to women, and they may not know that they're doing it just because they've been in this environment for so long, and to educate them and to say, hey, let's think about everyone in the room. I think that's a starting point to give that comfort level for everyone, diverse groups, not just women, into the playing field. So
I think what we are as Gig Girl Scouts are doing is a pretty well. I'm happy with the whole movement, and I think this is about right, and it should go in this direction. I mean, we are organizing those coding workshops, and we are also doing meetings with role models. But I would also agree that first of all. It is important to bring to notice, let's say, to our co-workers, to all people around us, and men especially, that they may not be aware of the fact that they are discriminating women in a way, and I think that I know it from my own experience from talking to friends of mine, to male friends, and they sometimes don't even. Well, they don't realize, why is it even a problem? Why don't you just go and take it? It is easy from their perspective. It is difficult for a white male to imagine that, there are situations in which you will not be allowed to do something only because of some feature. Like, I don't know, I think it is good to approach such a person, such a guy that doesn't really understand this particular point of view, and say, well, come on, imagine, how would you feel if you weren't allowed to do something because of your, for example, because of your, I don't know, facial hair, or because of the hair on your head, or, you know, like, this kind of situation. And I had one more thing, but maybe I will add it later.
So I would reiterate, I think I sort of see it as 3 phases, sort of like a systems theory. I think there's the input, and I think things that, like, you know, Geek Girls, you know, Code 2040, Railsbridge, Women Who Code, every single organization that's out there that's doing this, and frankly, like, everyone that is taking time out of their weekends, out of their nights, to be mentors and coaches for people that are looking to learn to become technologists or software developers or whatever part of technology they want to be a part of. That's huge. So that's sort of like the input. I think, frankly, keeping women in the workforce, that's a really hard thing. That's hugely difficult. And a lot of the time it's because they sort of reach this place where they're like, pardon my language, but they're like, fuck it, this is too hard, I'm out. Trying to keep women in the workforce as much as possible for whatever that means. You know, if it's like better childcare, if it's, you know, more maternity leave, whatever it is, sort of trying to keep it to where it's an advantage to have more women in the workforce, so that then they can move on to kind of what I think is like the third stage, which is being able to even have the opportunities to move up into leadership roles. I think when you do have women sort of at the top end of that, I should say kind of at the bottom end of that funnel, it's doing this like feedback loop to fill out the rest of that supply chain. So I think all of those are really important, and you know, I just want to applaud the people that are sort of involved in each part. And you know, as much as you can do, it is going to have, you know, exponential effects at every single part of that system. So.
Okay, we were saying that women should inspire others. So if you could choose one woman in technology that's inspiring for you.
Well, I have one. It's actually the CTO of our company. I sound like I really love my company. I do. So Rebecca Parsons, I remember meeting her a few years ago at a Grace Hopper conference, and she was just amazing, right? I mean, it was just very much like, I think I said an offhanded remark, you know, as we do, I said, wow, I wonder if I'll ever speak at a conference one day. Probably not. I'm probably too scared to do it. And she just kind of looked at me and was like, why? Why wouldn't you do it? I mean, you're a good developer. You know what you're talking about. You talk to clients all day long. What's wrong with talking at a conference? And I'm just looking at her like, yeah, okay. You know, I mean, and maybe it just takes that small one-liner that says, but why not? And I think that's where I like to always circle back to that role model, right? It doesn't have to take a massive speech saying this is what you have to do and this is the career you're going to go. It's maybe just that one line that says, yeah, why wouldn't you do it? It doesn't make sense that you wouldn't. And that always stuck with me, and that's someone I actually I look up to. So now every time I see her, I'm like, thank you. Hey, I'm actually speaking at conferences now. Woo. So, yeah.
At some point, I was thinking. I was searching for a big name in my head, and I realized that it will be It is difficult to find one name. And as it was written in this latest article in Newsweek about sexism in Silicon Valley, there is no Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs as it comes to women in tech. So at some point I was going to say, well, I will just, make a statement to be just to provoke and say that there is no singular name that I would like to mention, but actually, and I don't want to promote my organization again, but people that you work with are the people that you know the best. So it is easy to say, I don't know, something, for example, it is easy to be, to adore someone who is just popular and is visible on screen. But I think the lady that you have mentioned, Kamila Stępniowska, now her surname is Stępniowski because she moved to Seattle. I think this is the right person to mention. This is just a person that, she's the co-founder of Giger Scouts, and this is a person that just gets the things done, and there is no fuss about, being cool.
Yeah, it's a tough question because I think that there are people to be chosen, but I agree that it's tough to pick out one person that's in the news as much as maybe some of the other male CEOs and whatnot. I would say that the unfortunate thing is women leaders oftentimes get in the news more in sort of a negative slant than a positive slant. And I hate saying that because it seems like it's really negative, but it's sort of, you don't hear about Marissa Mayer, even though she's leading a huge company. As much as we don't love Yahoo, she's actually doing things that we don't necessarily get to hear about from the public eye that are really incredible from a business standpoint and a technical standpoint. So, everyone kind of talks about how she's a little bit bristly, but she's brilliant. She was part of Google when they were writing the algorithm. She absolutely had a hand in that, and she doesn't really necessarily get that credit. I would also say, and I'm now cheating, I'm totally picking two, but with my biology background and technical background, I think someone that's doing a lot is Elizabeth Holmes from Thuramos. She's creating, effectively coupling biology and technology to really push forward our ability to leverage our own healthcare. And I think it's pretty amazing what she's doing, and she's really no bullshit, just gets it done. So I would kind of pull out those two people. Cheated.
Okay, we have a couple of more questions, more minutes. So, wow.
We can give you our microphones.
Yeah, sure. Do we have some?
No, we've got plenty.
Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2. Right. So on a side note for the last question, I'm a bit surprised that no one mentioned Ada Lovelace. She was a lady who wrote the first compiler and basically created a lot of job workplaces for men and women in tech. My question is, from your experience, let's say, what were the reasons for you and your other female colleagues and friends to get into STEM fields? Was it in the high school? Was it post-high school? And how did you, let's say, what was your first connection in a social pool of people to inside the STEM fields or in, tech companies?
Wow, I actually had a very different background, actually a little bit similar to yours. I was doing my PhD in neuroscience for quite some time because that was just what I wanted to do. I'm pulling the Asian card right now, as I was supposed to be a doctor. So Chinese girl, that's what I'm supposed to do. But actually it was when I was doing my PhD that I realized I actually really like computers and I like programming and those types of things. And it was actually my professor who was sponsoring me in my PhD program that said, "Wow, you really like programming. Why don't you just do that?" And that was a disadvantage to him because I quit my PhD and went and did my master's in computer science instead. And so it was actually other people around me that acknowledged that I had a strength, and that's sort of how I got into computer science, and then right after that went to ThoughtWorks. So again, cheating. I have a very strong network of females and males, like, helping everybody grow, especially around the pair programming and all of those things. That's how I've learned quite a bit in the last 5 years. So.
I studied philosophy, so it doesn't have much to do with programming and stuff like that. But I was, on the way, I don't know, somehow I was taking up different, let's say, tasks, like, do that, design that poster or that leaflet, and on I started to get more interested in design. And I started to connect my education in philosophy and my interest in IT. And right now I'm, let's say, evolving more as a UX designer, but I'm a fresh one.
I sort of have been taking an informal survey of friends. This same question sounds like, and these numbers are incredibly rough, around 70% of the women that I know that are in tech had a mother, father that were in technology and early on sort of pushed them there. In their formative years, i.e. high school or college, they had a program that they were exposed to that was computers, computer science. I'm usually asking people that are programmers. And the outlier, sort of the 30%, was post sort of graduation of a program. They had a group or a friend that got them into the community. So whether it was through Railsbridge or Women Who Code or one of those organizations, and then they leveled up that way.
Okay, so my question is somehow a continuation of the point that Courtney made about keeping the women in the workforce. Because although there's a lot of meetups, organizations, initiatives that are bringing more and more women into the tech, I believe there's much less attention brought to the women who are really getting over years really angry at those small incidents of sexism or discrimination, and they're just somehow exiting, being fed up with all that. So how can we improve that there is not only the floor is somehow, let's say, more friendly for women to enter, but also that there is more able to keep them inside the tech?
Yeah, this is something I'm personally really interested in. I think that no matter what, organizations today, there is still a glass ceiling. As much as we want to think that we've progressed beyond that, it's still there. The women, well, I think it's difficult to network when the network is sparse, when it's thin. And I think that in an organization, 90% of your time, 40 hours a week, right, you're spending at work. That becomes your community, that becomes your network. Not having people that you can associate with that are of your same gender, of your same diverse group, to network and to sort of level each other up and to really kind of continue to raise the bar is actually a difficult thing. I think I would like to see women get better at networking, to helping each other out. I think it's something that, in Silicon Valley, that's like the thing that matters the most is your network, and you leverage the crap out of it, and you have no problem calling up someone and being like, hey, I need this thing, whether it's like my first seed round or a job, right? I think women definitely can get better at that. There's a couple, there's organizations that are doing a good job with it. Glassdoor is a new company that I think is gonna sort of try and approach it, mentorship. But mentorship and networking are two things that I think would help with that, because I think it allows women to see that ceiling that they perceive, that there is a leap around, either through it, around it, above it, whatever.
Well, the problem also with the networking is that there are women who are starting to create like some kind of women ghettos. Also, I've heard about the venture capital in Silicon Valley that is funding only women. No, no. Okay, I will check it for sure. But so I think that yes, networking definitely, but not only we shouldn't close ourselves only to other women. Like you know what I mean.
Good point.
We shouldn't restrict ourselves.
No, +1. No more to add.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time. You definitely You definitely can catch them later, but we have to prepare for the next talk. So sorry about that. If you have any final thoughts for the end, but definitely please catch them during the break. We are here to network. We are here to talk. We don't have to talk only during the regular hours. So if you could just share your final thoughts, I would welcome it very much.
Honestly, thank you to Politia for actually having this. I think if every conference could just open up this discourse, that'd be awesome. So thank you. That's pretty much all.
Agreed. Sorry. It's just healthy to have these conversations all the time. And so, yes, thank you. And thank you for attending. I mean, if no one's here, then we have no one to discuss this with. So thank you.
And I will say something it is very popular, it is very well seen to say something nice to the audience, but I think that we all do it naturally. So thank you for being, for so many of, for coming so, for that so many of you came here.
Yeah, thanks to you all, and thank you. It was very nice to be here.